I'm here in White Center at the Steve Cox Memorial Park. However, my video today isn't going to be about this park. It's going to be about the place where I grew up until I was 10 years old. White Center is a city near the Seattle area, and its nickname is Rat City, if that tells you anything. One which they, I think, proudly hold on to because they have a roller team that roller skates and plays roller derby that call themselves, I think, the Rat City Bombers here. So they hold that nickname proudly. But anyway, I'm gonna show you some places there around here where I grew up. Some people saw this as a dead-end town. I visited here 2 years ago and this roundabout wasn't here. This is now White Center Heights Park. When I was living here, it was just a swampy area. Place where this old lady lived in this house, and it was a really old house, and it kind of looked like a wicked witch's house. So we always called her the old witch, and we probably really thought she was a witch at the time. She had a cauldron that maybe she boiled kids in and ate them. But anyway, she, I think, passed away or something while we were still living here back in the 1960s. And what happened was her house was torn down, destroyed, and it just sat there for a while and without anyone removing it. And so me and my friends went looking through stuff, see if we could find anything. And I ended up stepping on a rusty nail. And I remember my mom kept soaking my foot in Epsom oil or Epsom salt and stuff like that, and kept trying to get the infection out of it and everything. We didn't go to the doctors that often. We were young because we were pretty poor. We didn't have money for co-payments or anything like that. Across the street there is White Center Heights Elementary. That's where I went to elementary school, but it didn't look like that. They destroyed the old building there that was there. It was a fairly large one-story building with like in a big L shape or boomerang shape or something. And out front where all this grass and stuff is, this was all playground, tether balls and places to, kick balls and things like that. And I remember I had a really mean second grade teacher who used to remember one time she got really mad at me and was pulling my hair in front of the class. She made me sit down under my desk as punishment for something. I wasn't a type of kid to misbehave. I'm not really sure why she didn't like me. I never got in trouble for any of my other teachers in school. Only her. She just, for whatever reason, she just decided she didn't like me. I remember not coming into school a couple of times and hiding out at home. Anyway, leaving her second grade class and going into my third grade class was one of the best times of my life. That was really nice to finally be leaving her. I remember telling my brother or maybe I even told my mom, I don't remember. I was only in second grade at the time, about everything that happened, but nobody ever did anything. And I remember later talking to my brothers about it, and they said they don't remember hearing anything about that. So anyway, that's one of my horror stories from living here. This was a really poor area. It was a mixed area. There were some, Hispanic, white. I don't think there were any African Americans that lived in our neighborhood, but that was back in the 60s. So anyway, wasn't a real pleasant area to move or to grow up in. But I was really happy when moving day came and we moved out in the summer of 1970. But in that house right there was a lady that used to watch us when we were little, because we weren't very old. I think my mom was working or something, so we had to go stay there for a couple of hours after school until my mom came and finally picked us up. This is inside the park, and apparently these columns represent diversity and the diverse group of people that live in this area. White Center's always been a little bit that way. There's always been, like, our next door neighbors were Native Americans. And then, of course, we had a Hispanic background. And we had Mexicans named the Rodriguezes that were good friends of ours that lived across the street from us. So it's always been a fairly diverse area anyway. I believe this old house is still here. In this house, somebody that worked for the J.P. Patches show, that was a local clown that had a morning children's television show. One of the guys that worked for that show lived here, and he had all kinds of paraphernalia from the show. Like I said, that was so long ago. That was like, I don't know, 50-something years ago. And the house is still here, although it doesn't look like anyone lives here. This is the street that I grew up on, 4th Avenue Southwest. My address was 10017. That house doesn't exist anymore, though, so I'm sure that address doesn't either. And this tree has been here that whole time. It was a fairly big tree even back then. And that was, what, 51, 52 years ago. There used to be a house right here, but they moved it. My best friend, Dennis Babbitt, used to live right there where all that, there was a house there where those containers are. He used to live right there. I used to come down to his house every day. House, and I think that house, although it was only a one-story, was a lower house. It must have, either rebuilt it or built it up. We're both here back then, and they'd been around for a while. I think they were probably around since the 40s. That place was never here. This used to be a cul-de-sac, and we lived at the end of it where that greenhouse is right there. That's about where, a little past that maybe, is where our house used to be, which ironically I think was also green for most of those years, although they'd painted it, I think, beige maybe at some point. Our neighbors of Fontaine's, they were the Native Americans. They used to live right over there, but I don't see their place anymore. It was here a couple of years ago. When I came by, I was surprised, but I don't see it anymore. It looks like they might have built something else up there now. I know they got a little fancy bridge here, little culvert that it goes over. Obviously, none of this was here when I was growing up. There were no little bike paths or anything like that. We rode our bicycles on the side of the streets and hoped that nobody hit us. This entire area used to be called the Projects. It was an area that they built, I think, when they were building a lot of stuff for World War II, because Boeing is located in the area. And I think a lot of workers used to live in the project housing. I don't know that it was actually called the Projects back then when it was initially built. But later it became affordable housing, so-called, when the 60s rolled around. And a lot of people, work for Boeing or whatever, they moved on to bigger, better lives with nicer paychecks. And people that were poor still lived here in the projects. Like I said, we didn't move out until the summer of 1970 before we finally got out of here. But I remember years later bringing my children back here. I think they were my 3 oldest children, Adrian, Sylvia, and Samuel. I had brought them back here in a car, driving through the neighborhood. And I said, hey, let's get out and check out my old neighborhood here, because the projects were still here back then. And they were all scared. They were like, no, Dad, I don't want to get out. They were looking around, I think they thought, it was a shady looking neighborhood, which I guess it kind of was. But, I grew up here, so it wasn't intimidating to me. But my kids absolutely refused to get out of the car.